The World of Coffee Expo is the biggest coffee event in all of North America, and every year it just seems to get bigger, more excessive, more going on. And yes, we are going to talk about that espresso G-Wagon. This year, the North American World of Coffee event was in San Diego, and I came back with 10 things that I think are worth paying attention to. Some of them are surprising. Some things I thought would never happen, happened. And I got a couple fun little bonuses at the end too. Let's get into my top 10, starting with number 10, the Created Co. booth. Well, this one is just pure fun. I love the Created Co. booth every year. They do such a good job of just making it a fun and party atmosphere in the middle of this exposition floor. This year, Jimmy Butler actually showed up at the Created Co. booth. If you don't know who he is, he's an NBA star who is super into coffee and launched his own coffee brand. There was also really creative espresso drinks, lots of collaborations and kind of free gifts that you could line up for and get that they did in collaboration with some really great coffee roasters. Good music, party atmosphere, just a lot of fun. And every year when I go to this show, I always make sure I leave with one of these. It's the Created Co. signature tumbler. They make one for every single year at this expo. And at this point, I'm kind of getting a bit of a collection going, but I love using these things all year. Very fun booth. Number 9, the new Timemore espresso machine. Now, Timemore has been making waves for a couple years now with their grinders, their brewers, their accessories, and this year they stepped into a bit of a new sphere with an espresso machine. They've had this sort of ongoing collaboration with the Meraki espresso machines where Timemore actually did the grinder that goes inside that machine. It's an all-in-one. And when you look at the Meraki and the Timemore machine sort of side by side, you can definitely see some cross-pollination in terms of design language and influence. The user interface on the Timemore machine is actually quite a bit different and actually takes inspiration from the automotive sector. Will be interesting to see how this one develops. It's not out in the wild yet, but once it starts hitting, it's going to be on my list for coverage. Number 8, the Zerno Z2. Now, the Z2 debuted at last year's expo, and this year it was nominated for a Best New Product. Zerno makes these made-to-order grinders that is kind of a go-to platform for coffee enthusiasts. You know, of all the grinders I've used, it is really hard to beat how easy it is to change burrs on a Zerno. And not to mention the tolerances, which are also crazy tight. And when the Z2 showed up at this year's show, it had some updates, including some changes to the RPM knob on the side, some changes to the knocker design, as well as some internal changes and external finish updates as well. The first Z2 units are just starting to make their way out to owners now. I do have one on the way, and we will be covering it. Number 7, the Say House Offsite event. Now, this one was really cool. Say Coffee Roasters out of New York partnered with Hyuna Coffee Club to create this really immersive event space that was actually off-site from the main expo. Say brought a pile of their coffees in these little single-serve tubes, and you could just walk up to them, grab one, grab whichever one you picked, and brew it either as espresso or filter on basically anything that you could imagine. Hyuna lined up all this crazy coffee equipment that you would normally only see in Instagram posts or YouTube videos, and it was really fun to just feel like you were in a bit of a coffee enthusiast playground and you could just grab whatever coffee you wanted and make it in any kind of way. Lots of great speakers as well. Super innovative event. I kind of hope they keep that going. Now, back onto the show floor. This is something for anybody who's into coffee roasting. Number 6 is the Roest P3000 production coffee roaster, which showed up this year with some extra stuff going on. They were debuting a prototype afterburner as well as a hopper that can feed up to 100 kilograms of coffee into the roaster automatically. Now, the P3000 is an electric 3 kilo production roaster, seriously technology forward, and a really cool piece of equipment that is sort of pushing that technology envelope. I also got to spend about an hour on the brew bar brewing some of our coffee from Got Coffee Co. Really fun time all around. Now, I said there was a couple things that I thought would never happen that happened, and the next thing on the list is one of those. Number 5 is the Preso design and Chris Baca collaboration dialed tamper. I actually had it sitting back there on my espresso machine the whole time, and I have been wanting to get my hands on one of these tampers for like 4 years, almost 5 years, ever since I first saw it. I didn't get one, they sold out, and honestly, I've thought about this thing ever since. Very expensive, very premium, very intentional. Not to mention how much of an influence Chris Baca is. They say every detail about this thing is over the top, and they're not exaggerating when they say that. You know, it looks cool, which is great. The bottom actually has a compound radius, which balances performance versus suction when you're pulling your tamper out. It's got a perfect 50-50 balance. And the stainless steel here is actually 440C stainless, which is treated to 65 HRC. Now, that's a bunch of numbers, but basically what that nets out to is this is some of the hardest steel that you can actually use. So if you drop this thing, you're going to be worried about your floor more than you're going to be worried about your tamper. They also did a limited 10 unit run with a special World of Coffee colorway. I didn't get that one, you know. I just really like pink, so I wanted to get this one. I have a couple buddies too that have this color combo, so, you know, wanted to match them as well. Now, if this is something you see and you're like, man, I like that, don't make the same mistake I did. They still have a couple of these listed for sale on their website. They're nuts expensive, but really, really cool. Okay, now let's talk about that G-Wagon. Number 4 on the list was the Moonwake Coffee Roasters and S-Works Design Spro Wagon. S-Works is known for their custom manufactured accessories and parts, and everything that they do is totally over the top and crazy. And Moonwake and S-Works teamed up to bring this fully kitted out G-Wagon to World of Coffee with an espresso machine in the back. And it's not just any espresso machine sitting back there. It's a Slayer single group, which costs about $14,000 when they're bone stock, which is not what this machine was. You had these custom machined legs and the group paddle there was all custom made. The side panels were, I think, made out of carbon. The rest of the body panels and the group head were plated. And not to mention all of the stuff that went into kind of creating the parts that were going to cause it to slide in and slide out of the G-Wagon. And the G-Wagon wasn't stock either. You know, it had a canopy and a ladder going up so you could sleep in the top and, you know, a wrap on the hood. As far as mobile espresso setups go, it was definitely more about making a statement than it was about economics for sure. It was also really great to meet the Moonwake crew. I'd heard a lot about them and Sheldon in person as well. So I'm going to leave links to both of them down there in the description. That was one end of specialty coffee at the World of Coffee Expo, and what comes next is in some ways kind of the opposite. Number 4 on the list is the Brezi coffee maker and something else that I found at their booth. Now, the Brezi machine is really cool, actually. It's a cold brew machine that does cold brew quite quickly, you know, in a few minutes, and it works by mixing a hot bloom to release a lot of the aromatics combined with a accelerated cold brewing process. It's really pretty cool. I got a couple units here. I'm going to be covering it on the channel. Makes delicious coffee, compact, novel, great tasting, very cool. But I walk up to their booth, and sitting next to the Brezi machines is a Bookoo Moto 80 coffee grinder. Now, if you haven't been really dialed into this space, the Bookoo is an 80 millimeter flat burr coffee grinder, coming in at just over $1,000, significantly undercutting basically everybody else in the space making a grinder like this. You know, the whole internet of coffee people has kind of been going bananas about this coffee maker ever since it was announced, and nobody's really seen a unit. And I walk up to it and I see it sitting there, and I'm pretty sure my mouth was just probably hanging open because they said, "Oh yeah, you're the first person to actually recognize that." And I was like, how is that possible? So I got to talking to them about it sitting there. And they said, yeah, it's actually probably the only unit in North America right now. So I had a quick look at it, and my first impressions were pretty good. So needless to say, I'm excited for these things to start hitting and to give them a closer look. Chinese company, really became known for the little scales that they started making. Interesting stuff. And next on the list, we have another entry that is showing how the price ceiling in specialty coffee enthusiast gear is continuing to drop. Number 2 on the list is the Wendoi espresso booth. Now, Wendoi is a Chinese espresso machine company that absolutely came out swinging at this year's show. And with how disruptive their technology is and how aggressive their pricing is, I feel like the mainline espresso machine manufacturers could be catching some strays in the next couple of years. At last year's show, zero presence from this brand. This year's show, huge booth. Their first entry on the scene within the last couple of years was the Wendoi Data. And this made big waves in the space because it kind of encroaches on the space held by the decent espresso machine at a significantly lower price. Then they released a machine called the Lita, which offers a lot of those same principles in an even more compact, flexible, and cost-effective package. But they didn't just show up with those. They also showed up with a full commercial lineup. All I can say is I think things are about to get a little disruptive. And that brings us to number 1, for me anyway, was the Fellow Series 1 and the Opus 2. Now, for the last couple of years at these shows, Fellow has done an event on the Thursday night before the show starts. And that was no exception this year. They had an event with Series 1s and Opuses all over the place at this crazy cool bar in San Diego called Neighborhood. You know, you go into this place and it's not a huge bar, and there's all these kind of rooms that you can go around to, and there's this secret kind of room called Youngblood with this bar that's kind of in behind this cooler. Very cool space. Espresso machines everywhere. You know, they had an Opus 2 on the bar in Youngblood, and, you know, I just opened it up and started taking it apart, taking the burr out. It's the first time I've seen this grinder. Borderline inappropriate maybe, but I was having fun with it. And the energy at this party is the same energy that Fellow brought to the show floor at World of Coffee. You know, they were going hard on the Series 1. They were everywhere. They had a custom 1 of 1 Series 1 that they did in collaboration with Jimmy Butler and his Big Face brand. You know, everybody was going over to this booth to check out this machine and the new Opus grinder. You know, I have one sitting back there on the counter. We're going to be covering it on the channel here shortly. But Fellow is taking that same disruptive approach that you see with Wendoi and applying it within the context of an established brand, in North America at least. Some differences, but very technology forward, very tunable for enthusiasts, but also super easy to use for people who have no interest in learning the nuts and bolts about espresso machines. You know, Sarah, my wife, she famously kind of does not like using espresso machines. She finds them too complicated, too annoying, and she loves using the Series 1. Now, the Opus 2 is not actually in the wild yet, but it was cool to kind of get hands-on with this grinder. Big improvement when it comes to the finishes, also a improved adjustment mechanism, which is really nice. That grinder needed that, as well as an increased burr size for faster throughput. So I'm very excited to test that grinder as well once they start hitting. Really great World of Coffee, tons of great coffee, great time hanging with friends. But I do have a couple bonus items as well. And they're actually some of my favorites from the whole weekend. And the first one is right here. Something that doesn't have anything to do with Expo. This is an all-black Karasu Kyoto edition of the Tsubame Kalita Wave. These were released in a limited run. Again, something I saw, I didn't get, and then I pined for years. And I did a trade with a good friend of mine, Mike Flores, who was willing to pass this on into my care. Really, really excited about this, and I'm going to be using this thing on the bar all the time. Second bonus is actually my wallet. This is made by a company called Kamakiri Workshops. Kamakiri Workshops is a leather goods and lifestyle company that is actually owned by Weber Workshops. Now, a lot of people don't actually know about this little sub brand, and I didn't even actually know about it until I saw it, and I was immediately all about this stuff, partially because the Weber stuff is of such high quality, but I grabbed this wallet from the Weber crew, as well as this passport wallet, which is really clutch if you travel at all. Underestimated just how handy that would be. The wallet comes with this little snap on here so that you can snap it onto a belt that Kamakiri also makes. Really cool stuff. Immediately switched over all my stuff into this wallet. If you are a bit of a coffee nut job like me and you're looking for some new leather stuff, definitely worth checking out this brand. Links below. So that was World of Coffee San Diego 2026. Some things excessive, some disruption, a lot of fun, a lot of friends, a lot of coffee. Really, really great time. Let me know your favorite sighting. I hope your next cup of coffee is fantastic, and we'll see you next time.